Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi, Nedarim Ayin Aleph. We begin right on top of the Amid at the Mishnah. As we learned several times in this parak, an Isha who's a Na'ara, 12 years old, between 12 and 12 and a half, when she turns into a Boigeres. So a Na'ara, who is Mu'urasa, who is engaged, who was Mekabel Kedushin, from this Arus, this fiancé, this Chassan, who sometimes is referred to as the Baal, even though it's just an engagement. Of course, not today's engagement. We mean Kedushin, in which case she's considered a partial Eishes Ish. So in that state, when she is a Nara Hamurasa, she goes ahead and makes a neder. Both her father and her husband will jointly address that neder. They have two options before them, either Kiyum or Hafara. Either they affirm, they reinforce the neder, let it stand, or they disrupt the neder, and they cancel it. And they will do it in conjunction with each other, b'shutfus, as a partnership. So one without the other cannot do the job. Says the Mishnah a Chiddush. Suppose the first Arus is no longer here. So Nodra v'hi Arusa. She was a Na'ara, who was engaged, and then made a neder in that state. But then Nizgar Sheba Bayayim. So suppose the father and the fiancé had heard the neder. They had the ability to address it on that day and no more past that day, right? That's the maximum allowed, till the end of the day. And what happened was, Nizgar Shebabayim, she got divorced on that very day. Nizar Shebabayim, then she got engaged to Shimon, next man. Even if this happened 100 times over. Engaged and divorced to 100 people. Now she's holding at number 100. And it's still the same day. What a busy day. So, via Uba'ala, ha'achroin mafirin nedereh. Who will have the ability to address that neder? Of course, her father, who's been there, all throughout. He retains his right to afaras nedarim. But what about the husband's part? The first fellow is no longer here. Avia ubala ha'acharoin, the most recent, the current husband. He gets a chance to do afaras nedarim. Ze'aklal. This is the general rule when it comes to this halacha. Kol shalayatza l'rshus atzma sha'achas. As long as she didn't totally leave her father's rishus completely. She did not gain full independence, which can happen through either one of the following scenarios. Either the age factor changes. She turns into a Boigeres in the meantime. Right? She turns 12 and a half. So she made the neder when she was a Nara. Then she turns a Boigeres, and then her father wants to, look after the neder. He can't. He can only do it when she's a Nara. Or if she got married. If she's actually married, then her father relinquishes all control, in which case he no longer has the right to interfere with her nedarim. But as long as either one of these factors are not present, she's still a Na'ara and only engaged. She never completely left her father's rishus and became an independent person. If that didn't happen even for one moment, she's still there, she's still connected to the father, and therefore the father and the current husband. In our case, it would be husband number 100. They retain their rights to do afaras nedarim, and the question is why? Menolan. How do we know the orus achroin meifi nedarim? Sheniru l'orus rishon. Here's a chiddush. We have nedarim, which were expressed 9 o'clock in the morning with orus number 1, and now it's towards evening. A totally different orus in her life. How do we know that the current chassan can address, can interfere, can be mavatel a neder which was committed to under the first husband's watch? Menolan da'oros achroin mefer nedarim shenidru la'oros rishon amar Shmuel. So the Ran explains that Shmuel was certain about this halacha. Which halacha? You see, the Mishnah says that even though she, switched husbands, the last one will have the ability to do Afaros Nedarim. But the Mishnah explains because it's still the same day, and the question is, why does it have to be the same day as the neder was made? And the answer is because the first husband was aware of that neder. He was presented with that neder. It's called Yom HaShmiya. So once he had a connection to that neder and the ability to interfere with that neder can only be attended to on that day and no more. So even though the first Aris is no longer on the scene, we have an Aris Achroin here now who can interfere, but he's doing it sort of instead of the first Aris. He's stepping into his shoes, and it only works until the end of that day. That's why the Mishnah stresses that it happened by B'yom. It's all on the same day, and therefore the neder is still, alive. That's a chiddush, which Shmuel learned from his Rebbeim, that in fact the Mishnah is addressing even this type of case. Not just, where the father heard about it. Even if the Aris heard about it, we say that the next Aris can take over. That's a chiddush. It's not my neder, it's his. It was done under his watch, under his care. So again, Minolan da'oros achroin mefer nedarim shenu niru la'oros rishon amar Shmuel across based on a pasuk adrashim oyisei leish una darei, which was actually the pasuk teaching us that by anaro muras, husband and father address her nedarim. So she got engaged to this man unedareha aleha with pre-existing nedarim, which were made before engagement. Nedarim shoyo leo kvar. So even though this aris is being presented by old nedarim, pre-existing nedarim, he can address them. Asks the Gemara, well, maybe it's limited to a case where they were not yet presented to any other aris. Dil mahani mila. Maybe this only works shaloi niru la'aris rishon, when these nedarim she's bringing into the marriage were not presented to a previous husband. Aval nedarim sheniru la'aris rishon. But if they were presented to the first aris, he knew, he heard, he was aware of these nedarim, in which case he had acquired them, so to speak. Who says it gets passed on to the next husband? Why might say mefer aris achroin? Who says the last aris, the current husband, can take care of it? And what does the Gemara mean to ask? So perhaps just the father will address it without getting the husband involved. That's one shot in the run. Or nobody. It's in limbo. The first aris who was meant to take care of it is no longer here, so that's it. Nobody can take care of it. No, maybe that's the case. Answers the Gemara, no. Aleha krod yiserahu. See, the pasuk could have said the same thing without the word aleha. She comes into the engagement with her. Why aleha? That's a drasha, an extra pasuk to indicate that even if she has nedarim that were already presented to a prior husband, nevertheless the current aris, the current baal, can address them. And we have a raya to Shmuel from a brayso. Tani can say to Shmuel that it is so. Nara hamurasa aviyo ubalo ha'acharoin mefirin nedarim. So the husband, the current husband, and her father can address her nedarim. Ketzad, let's have some interesting examples of this halacha. So the brayso will present two cases, the second of which will substantiate Shmuel's chiddush. Even a neder which was presented to a former husband can be addressed by the current husband. Ketzad. Shama aviyah veheferla. She's a nara, amurasa. Father heard about her neder. He did hafara. Okay, so he took care of his part. And the husband didn't get a chance to know about this neder before he died. So he passed away without being presented with the neder. And then she got engaged again on that very same day. It's happened 100 times over. What happens to that neder, which is still partially outstanding? It was only partially nullified by the father. So the halacha is that in fact the most recent, the current husband, will address the neder, as we learned in the Mishnah. So the father's part was already taken care of beforehand, and now the current husband will take care of the part which was meant to be addressed by your husband. Okay, continues the Bryce in the next case. Shama Bala Vehefala. So this is in the reverse. She was a Nara, engaged. Husband heard about the neder, did hafara. So he sort of knocked off his half of the neder. By the time the father got around to knowing about this neder, husband passed away, in which case his hafara becomes batal. Right? When he dies, his hafara is over. It's as though he never made the hafara. So now the neder is sort of propped back up again. Can the father, and let's keep in mind, she got re-engaged. She's now engaged again to another person. Question: does the father need to get the new husband involved or not? So according to Beis Shammai, no. Chayzer ha'av u'meifer chelko shabal. So the father can just come along, ignore the new husband, and do the entire hafara on the entire neder. Okay, so basically he's going to take care of, the father's going to take care of his part of the neder, which he has yet to address, right? And also can address the other half, which typically belongs to the husband. Okay, so again, we have a husband who did hafara, he passed away. All right, then the father heard about it. So according to this approach, which is Beis Shammai's shita, although the husband's hafara becomes batal when he dies, and again we're speaking that she is now engaged again to a new husband, a new urus, the father could just come along and ignore the new urus and just knock off the entire neder. Amar B'Nasan, hein divrei Beis Shammai. This opinion reflects Shitas Beis Shammai. You see, we had this machlekes a couple of days ago on Samach Tes. A father and the Baal can do Hafaras and Nedarim together. What happens if one of them does it on his own? So there's a partial effect. To what extent? Is it a quantitative effect? Is it a 50% knockoff? He takes care of his half and the other half is still outstanding, completely outstanding, unaffected? Or shall we say, miklash kalish? It's not like he's chopping off his part. It's not like Megas guys, he's just slipping off 50%, which belongs to him. No. It's a weakening of the full arrangement, of the full neder. It's a qualitative effect on the entire neder. Which of course, awaits the other party who will come along and finish off the job. So Beis Shammai held Megas guys. So in this case, where the husband did the hafara on his own before passing away, he sort of knocked off his part of the neder, and that's it. He's out of the picture. So now, the urus is no longer needed for the hafara. Only the father is needed for the other half. So even if the husband passed away, the urus is no longer a player. That's it. We don't need him anymore. And therefore, the father just takes over the entire neder, does a full hafara, and she's good to go. That's Beis Shammai shita. Aval Beis Hillel will hold that when one of these individuals makes the hafara, it's meklash kolish. It affects a weakening of the entire neder. It's not a full. It doesn't even have even partially. It doesn't completely address the neder. It's just a weakening of the neder. So according to them, Aval Beis Hillel ein yochel lahafer. When the husband did the hafara and he passes away, since his hafara was just like a partial hafara, it's an incomplete process, which requires the other party to come and join him and complete the process. So now when the husband passed away, it's as though nothing happened, because he never got a chance to sort of even complete what he did. He needs the father to help him complete the hafara. See, according to Beis Shammai, the husband did 50%. He knocked away half the nether. So even when he passed away and that hafara sort of gets cancelled, nether's propped back up. But now it's in the father's hands. The Uris is no longer a player. When he was here, he did what he needed to do. He was done. Checked it off. So now that he's no longer here, and the nether sort of comes back to life, but it's in the father's possession. And the father addresses it completely. He doesn't need the new husband to be involved. But according to Beis Hillel, even when the first Baal did that hafara, it was a partial job, was a miklish, just a weakening effect, which was not deemed even a partial hafara. It was a totally incomplete process, awaiting completion by his partner, the father. Then when he passed away, he didn't get a chance to culminate that process. Even on his end, it wasn't the full process. So therefore, when the nether props back up, we still need the Uris involved. The Uris was never out of the picture yet. He was still, on standby, so to speak. So now with the first husband passed away, we have a new Uris. He's sort of in his shoes. He's taking his place. He's playing the part, he's playing the role of the Uris. And therefore the father can't do it independently. He needs to still ask the Uris to do his part, which was never really done properly. That's the way the Ran explains the Gemara. So according to Beis Hillel, ein yochel lahafar, a father can't just do it on his own without the new husband's involved. What's the point of machlekes? As we explained, Beis Shammai sabri, Beis Shammai hold nedarim nami shiroi la'uris nisroikin l'shus la'ab. Even in this case, where the nether was presented to the first husband, and says the Ran, number two, we have a new Uris standing right here in this place. So you would think perhaps there's no way for the father to assume total control over this nether, which was already in the hands of the first Uris and is being sort of looked after now by the second Uris. No, even here we say Nisroikn Rishus La'ab, the husband's ability to do Hafaras and Nedarim gets transferred to the father. The father totally takes control of the entire nether. Umegas Gais is based on the concept of cutting off, of chopping off, as we explained before, that the first Uris did his job already, played his role, he's off the table, and even though he passed away and the second husband is sort of in his place, the father is totally in control right now. But according to Beis Hillel, Savri Avio Ubalo Achroin Befirin Derea. According to Beis Hillel, the father cannot ignore the new husband. Only together can they do Hafaras and Nedarim. V'loimigas guys, because they hold that when the first husband did his Hafara, he didn't do a chop. He didn't slice off that piece. Rather, they hold Miklish Kolish. He affected sort of a weakening on the nether. It wasn't really chal yet, says the Ran. It wasn't really activated until it connects and it combines and it joins with the father's efforts as well. And that didn't happen yet. He passed away without completing the job with the father. And therefore we say the new husband sort of takes over. He plays the role of husband, and therefore the father needs to join forces with the new husband, Avio Bala Mefirin Derea. Okay, so bottom line is like this. We have two cases in the Brisa. First case is rather simple. And again, it's based on the concept that a Nara Hamurasa's Nedarim need to be addressed by her father and the husband. And even if the first husband passes away and she gets re-engaged on that same day, the Yom HaShmiyah, we say that the father and the last husband will do the Hafaras Nedarim. So in the first case we have father heard, made the Hafara, husband didn't get a chance, he didn't hear anything, he passed away, we have a new husband, so the father and the husband together will do Hafaras Nedarim. In the second case we have the husband heard, he did Hafara. Now he passed away and she's now re-engaged. What happens now? Father comes to do his part. Can he just do it on his own, or does he need to join forces with the new husband? According to Beis Shammai, no need to do that. It's based on the concept of Megas Gaius. The first husband already did his part fully, left the scene. It was totally given over to the father, and now even though the first husband passed away, we just allow the father to totally take over and do Hafaras Nedarim on the entire thing. The Arus has left the scene. He's a non-factor. We don't need to reckon with husbands today. Whereas according to Beis Hillel, no, father and the husband together need to do it, because what the first husband did wasn't the complete process, and therefore he was still on the scene. He was still a player. We need his contribution. If he's not here, at least we'll have his replacement, the second husband. So father and second husband need to do the Hafaras Nedarim. Bottom line is, we see clearly a raya to Shmuel, right? We see that even a neder which was presented to a prior husband can be addressed by the current husband. It's a question of whether he needs to address it. According to Beis Shammai, there's no need. According to Beis Hillel, there is a need. But in concept, even Beis Shammai would agree that it can be addressed by the current husband. So that's a raya to Shmuel, that the new husband can address even pre-existing nedarim, and as long as he does it together with the father who was there all along. He's sort of latching onto the father who was there all along, and he joins forces and does a Hafaras Nedarim. Here comes a new question. The Bnei Yeshiva wanted to know as follows. So, a husband, a father, when presented by the neder, has several options. So let's look at the husband. He can do akama, which means to consent, to approve, to reinforce the neder. He can do hafara, which is basically canceling the neder, or he can just be passive about it, ignore it, shtika, just remain silent. In which case, he still has till the end of the day to make up his mind. How do we treat divorce? You see, when he divorces her, again, we're speaking about a nara hamurasa, right? So when he divorces her, he knows he's pretty much shutting the door on his ability to do the afara. So shall we say that the act of divorce is like an expression of consent? It's like approving the neder, or not? Iboilu girushin kishtika damya. When he divorces her, is it as though he's just being passive because he didn't make that reference to the neder? We don't know what's in his mind, right? Oika hakama damya, or should we treat it like hakama, like he was Makai in the neder? Asks the Gemara, what's the point of asking this question? Is it just theoretics, or is there any halachic ramification? So either way, once the day is up, the neder becomes implemented, and once he divorces her, he can no longer interfere with her neder. So either way, the neder will stand, whether we treat divorce as hakama or we treat divorce as shtika. Ultimately, the neder stands. So what's the nafkamina? L'may nafkamina. Says the Gemara, an interesting case. Kigoin shenadra. So we have this nara hamurasa who's engaged to this man. She makes a neder. V'shama bala. Husband hears about it. V'gersha. Instead of protesting, instead of canceling it, he just goes and divorces her. V'hadra b'yoymei. And he retakes her. He re-engages her on that very same day. Okay? Because once the day is up, of course, his privilege expires, right? It's no longer Yom Shamai. We're speaking that he took her back on that same day. And, the Ran explains that firstly, we're not speaking about a married couple. Because if that was the case, if he divorces her and retakes her, the new husband, so to speak, cannot address pre-existing Nedarim. That's the halacha, that a Baal is not mefer b'koidmin. He can't address Nedarim which predate his marriage, even though they were actually made during the first marriage. Doesn't matter. Once he disengages, it's over, and he retakes her. He can't address old Nedarim. The only way a husband can address old Nedarim is together with father, as we explained before, because the father is, has been consistently alongside her throughout, right? He always had the right to those Nedarim, so the husband can sort of latch onto his koyach. So bottom line is, a father needs to be a player, and that only works when she's only engaged. We had this before in the Mishnah, right? If she's married, the father loses control. So apparently, says Ram was speaking about an arusa. And then he says like this, that when he retakes her, again, we're speaking that he only engaged her, because once he marries her, here again, father is out of the picture. So it has to be that they were merely engaged when she made that neder. He divorced her from the engagement and then re-engaged her. Okay, so she was arusa and she's now an arusa, in which case father is still a total player here, right? So theoretically, the husband can address this neder. He can be made for this neder, even though it predates his second engagement. It doesn't matter, because the father sort of keeps it alive, and he latches onto that father. The question remains whether we treat the gerushin as merely a shtika, as a sort of a passive response to her neder, in which case he still has till the end of the day. So, I amar mar kishtika dami. If you'll consider the divorce as shtika, matzi meferla, so he still has the ability to do that first nedarim until the end of the day. If you amar mar hakama dami, but if you treat the divorce like a hakama, a reckless act of just disregard for the neder, which indicates that he's totally okay with it, hakama dami, le matzi meferla, and it's too late. Even though it's still the same day, hafara is no longer an option. Once he's making, he can't do hafara unless he's shoyel on the hakama, but short of that, hafara is no longer an option. So which way is gerushin treated? We'll have to leave it as a question mark for now. Be'ez Hashem will continue tomorrow. So bottom line is, a neder of a nara amurasa must be addressed by her father and husband, and the current husband. So suppose the first husband heard about it, divorced her, she's been re-engaged 100 times, but it's still the same yoim, the neder is still alive. The last husband will do hafaras nedarim. This was Shmuel's interpretation of the Mishnah based on the pasuk, a drasha of Aleha. Even these nedarim can be addressed by the current husband. We had a riot to Shmuel from the Brisa, which contained two cases, second of which was subject to machlokes b'sham and b'shilol, whether we need the new husband's involvement, but all agree that theoretically he can be involved, and that's a riot to Shmuel. We ended with the shaila of how to treat a gerushin. Is it like shtika, or is it like hakama, in which case hafara is no longer an option? Be'ez Hashem to be continued tomorrow. All the best to you, and hatzlacha rabba.